The sun had barely begun its climb across the sky, but the city of Thebes already bristled with activity. The golden light of dawn danced on temple columns, but whispers lingered in the shadows like a storm waiting to break. The scent of incense struggled to mask the sense of foreboding in the air. Something was brewing, something that even the pharaoh's divine authority might not contain. Nefertari stood on her balcony, her hands gripping the stone rail as if bracing herself against an unseen force. The linen of her gown whipped in the wind, but the storm within her threatened to tear her apart. The world saw a queen, revered and untouchable, yet she felt like a prisoner, caged by duty, shackled by a secret that could destroy her. Her heart ached for Akhenaten, who had become her solace and sin. Their love was forged in fire, in the moments stolen between duty and despair. But the fire had spread, and its embers blazed. She didn't know how much she could take the torment of the affair anymore. With each passing day, with every tormentful touch, her desire and fear grow. Akhenaten was a trusted advisor to the pharaoh, her husband, yet he was so much more to her. He was the man who understood her in ways Ramses never could. Their love had blossomed in the shadows, a secret that could ruin them both. If anyone found out, it would mean disgrace, exile, or worse, death. She closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the forbidden love that had grown between them over the years. The two had first crossed paths when she was young, just a new queen, eager to understand the complexities of the empire she would one day rule beside her husband. Akhenaten, with his sharp mind and unassuming wisdom, had quickly become a guiding figure in her life. But as the years passed, their relationship evolved into something more. A connection that was far beyond mere political alliance. It was something that neither of them had planned or expected. But what began as mutual respect had soon transformed into an undeniable passion, one that neither could control. Nefertari's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind her. She turned, and there he was, Akhenaten, standing in the doorway of her chamber. His presence was always calming, but today there was a tension in the air, a weight between them that neither had spoken of until now.
Akhenaten,
she whispered, her voice low and filled with longing.
Why do we continue this? We cannot keep hiding in the shadows forever.
Akhenaten stepped closer, his dark eyes filled with the mixture of affection and concern.
Nefertari, you know why we do this. The consequences of our actions are too great to ignore. If the pharaoh finds out...
Then let him find out,
she said impulsively, cutting him off.
We've lived in the shadows long enough. I am a queen, and I deserve more than the hollow affection of a man who does not see me for who I truly am.
Akhenaten's gaze softened, his hand reaching out to gently take hers.
You are more than just a queen. You are a woman, powerful yet passionate. But we must be careful. There are eyes everywhere. If we are discovered, we will be torn apart.
Nefertari pulled her hand away, her emotions swirling like a storm inside her. She had spent too many years hiding behind the walls of her palace, too many years playing the role of the obedient wife. It was time for her to claim what was hers, what had always been hers.
I can no longer live like this, Akhenaten,
she said, her voice trembling with the weight of her decision.
If we must be torn apart, then so be it. But I will not live another day in this cage, pretending to be someone I am not.
Akhenaten stepped back, his face a mixture of concern and sadness.
Nefertari, you don't understand. The consequences of your actions will echo throughout Egypt. The people, the gods themselves, they will turn against you. You will lose everything.
I'd rather lose everything than lose you.
She looked him dead in the eye, her resolve solidifying with every passing second.
Let's run away, start afresh, build something new.
I can't. The world out there is cruel and harsh, different from what you're used to. You'll be disappointed. This shadow of ours is better.
He pleaded, but her mind was made up.
I'll not live a lie anymore. Let me know when you love us enough to try.
She said, and angrily returned to the palace. As the days passed, the tension between them grew. Akhenaten tried to make Nefertari see reason, but she was adamant.
I'd rather have none of you than continue with this.
She spat out when he desperately cornered her one evening. Unknown to these tempestuous lovers, their stolen moments had not gone unnoticed. The first whispers of Nefertari's secret began as nothing more than idle gossip among the palace servants. A fleeting glance here, a lingering touch there, details small enough to dismiss, but tantalizing enough to spark curiosity. A kitchen maid mentioned to a steward how the queen often requested Akhenaten's counsel late into the night, and a guard swore he saw the queen's personal chariot outside Akhenaten's villa when the city was cloaked in darkness. The rumors, once inconsequential murmurs, began to weave a web of intrigue that spread across the court. The high priest of Amun was among the first to get wind of this. Akhenaten's influence had long been a thorn in the side of the temple elite. His reformist ideas threatened their control over the kingdom's spiritual heart. The priest coincided with Akhenaten's private strolls. They observed the queen's servants delivering scrolls sealed with her personal emblem to Akhenaten's chambers. The court's paranoia grew, and the shadows around Nefertari and Akhenaten began to close in. One evening, as a full moon bathed the palace in silver light, a servant loyal to the high priest crept unnoticed into the queen's chambers, hidden in the folds of drapery. What he witnessed confirmed his worst fears. Nefertari and Akhenaten, standing closer than propriety allowed, their hands intertwined, their voices low with words of affection. The servant slipped away before they noticed his presence, his heart pounding as he carried the damning evidence to the high priest. The next morning, Ramses was summoned to the temple under the pretense of urgent religious council. There, the high priest revealed the betrayal, his voice dripping with solemnity. My Pharaoh, the gods weep for the sanctity of your house. Your queen and your trusted advisor have defiled the sacred bonds of marriage and loyalty. Ramses's initial reaction was disbelief. Nefertari, his beloved queen, Akhenaten, his most loyal advisor, but the high priest presented him with further tales of testimony from the spies and the servant, painting a picture too detailed to ignore. Ramses's heart hardened as the full weight of the betrayal settled upon him. Determined to see the truth with his own eyes, Ramses arranged a trap. That night, under the guise of urgent matters requiring Akhenaten's attention, he ensured the advisor would meet with the queen. Hidden behind a concealed partition in Nefertari's chambers, Ramses waited, his fury barely contained. When Akhenaten entered, Nefertari greeted him with an embrace that spoke of their deep connection.
You shouldn't have come.
She whispered, her voice trembling.
The wolves have ears.
I couldn't stay away.
Akhenaten replied, brushing a strand of her hair from her face.
Not when the weight of us feels heavier than ever.
Their stolen moment was shattered by the sound of Ramses stepping from the shadows, his presence a thunderclap in the room. How dare you, he roared, his voice shaking the very walls. His gaze was locked on Akhenaten. but the betrayal he felt toward Nefertari burned just as deeply. Nefertari's face paled, and Akhenaten instinctively stepped in front of her, shielding her from the pharaoh's wrath.
My lord, this is not what it seems.
Akhenaten began, but the pharaoh's hand shot up to silence him. Do not insult my intelligence, Ramses spat, his voice low and dangerous. You conspire under my roof, you dishonor my name, and you think you can justify this? Nefertari found her voice, stepping forward despite Akhenaten's attempts to hold her back.
Ramses, please, this was never meant to hurt you.
To hurt me? Ramses interrupted, his laughter bitter. You betray me with my most trusted advisor and speak of intentions. He summoned the gods. Their arrival was swift and unyielding. Take Akhenaten, he ordered, his voice cold and unrelenting. He will answer for his treachery in the dungeons. Akhenaten was seized, his struggles futile against the armed guards. As he was dragged away, he called out,
Nefertari, no matter what happens, remember, I love you.
Ramses turned to Nefertari, his expression a mixture of heartbreak and fury. You have humiliated me, Nefertari. You have humiliated Egypt. You will be punished for this. Ramses, betrayed and enraged, viewed Akhenaten's actions as a direct threat to his authority. Ramses ordered a swift trial to publicly shame Akhenaten, accusing him not only of treachery, but of attempting to undermine the god's divine order. The court session was a spectacle. Loyal advisors and priests painted Akhenaten as a manipulative figure who had bewitched the queen. Nefertari, stripped of her political influence, could only watch in horror as Akhenaten was condemned to death by public execution. The pharaoh made sure she had a room that gave her the best view of this horror. Nefertari, though spared the death penalty, was confined to a small, isolated section of the palace. Guards monitored her every move, and she was barred from communicating with anyone outside the royal circle. The once revered queen found herself abandoned by allies and worshippers alike. Her solitude, however, only deepened her resolve. She pleaded for Akhenaten's life, writing desperate messages to Ramses that were ignored or burned. The day of Akhenaten's execution was a somber one. He was paraded through the streets of Thebes as a warning to those who would dare defy the pharaoh's rule. Nefertari, under heavy guard, was forced to witness her lover's end. Their eyes met, and in that fleeting moment, unspoken words passed between them: love, sorrow, and the bitter acceptance of their fates. As Akhenaten was led to the execution site, he maintained his composure, his final words a plea to the gods to protect Nefertari. The pharaoh, observing the execution from his throne, displayed no emotion as the blade ended Akhenaten, and Nefertari's anguished scream echoed through the city. That night, as Nefertari mourned her loss, she received an unexpected visit from Horem, a humble scribe and Akhenaten's illegitimate brother, who had disguised himself as a palace god. From Akhenaten, Horem said swiftly, handing her a box containing a ring adorned with Nefertari's royal insignia, accompanied by a cryptic note. "My queen," he whispered urgently, his voice barely audible. "He implores you to live. For him. For the love you both shared." Nefertari's eyes welled up with tears as she read the letter.
He had this planned all along.
She sobbed. Horem's expression turned somber. "For the longest. I wish he were the one to take you," he said, his voice tinged with sadness. "But rest assured, he ensured your safety. We must depart now." She nodded and swung into action. Nefertari, cloaked and trembling, followed Hotem and his waiting men through a hidden passage beneath the palace. The labyrinthine tunnels had been used centuries before as an escape route for royal families during times of invasion. Now, they served as her lifeline. Above ground, the city slumbered, unaware of the events that had transpired. However, the tranquility was short-lived, as a servant soon discovered the subdued guards meant to keep watch over Nefertari outside her door, and her room empty. The pharaoh's court was left to grapple with the aftermath. Her disappearance became a legend, a story of love, betrayal, and resilience. Ramses, though triumphant in punishing the lovers, found his reign overshadowed and bruised by the scandal. The gods' favor seemed to wane, and whispers of Nefertari's escape haunted and threatened him for the rest of his days. Did Nefertari find peace beyond the sands of Thebes? What became of her in exile? The answers remain hidden, but one truth persists. Hers was a love so fierce, it reshaped an empire. And the high priest, let's just say he got what he deserved.